Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Pyro, and this is going to be my first video on my new Let's Talk About Nerd and Geek Stuff channel, so I hope you enjoy this. So this first video is going to be a spoiler-free review of Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars Episode 9, and I hope you enjoy it. So first off, I want to say that I loved all the actors and the acting, and I hope that none of the Star Wars fans out there, if you didn't like the movie, that you don't hold it against the actors, because I really felt that all of the main actors did a really great job with what they were given. I absolutely loved Daisy Ridley. I thought John Boyega was amazing in what he did. I thought Adam Driver was also really amazing in the role that he was given. I think Oscar Isaac was not given enough to do and not developed enough. But I thought, again, with what Oscar Isaac was given, I thought he was great, and Ian McDiarmid also was really good. So we're gonna get into some of the stuff that I think are the biggest complaints about the movie here. The biggest thing really is that it's canon breaking, and then the other thing is that it's rushed. So those are the two big ones. Let's talk about the canon breaking aspect. So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't admit or talk about is that every Star Wars movie since the original trilogy has been canon breaking, and some majorly so, and even especially in the prequels. The difference in the sequels is not just that the plot and the history of Star Wars has been broken, but the characters. And a lot of people really take issue with the way that the main cast of the original trilogy was portrayed in the sequels. And you're not going to find anything better or different in episode 9 than you did in episode 7 or 8, unfortunately. I do think that the main cast of the new players was portrayed a little bit better this time around than in episode 8. But again, if you didn't like episode 7 or 8 in terms of the main cast, you're not going to really feel like this is going to be done really well with the main cast of the original trilogy as well. So on top of that, there were definitely some moments in the movie in terms of the actual plot that just didn't make sense to me, where I was almost getting disgusted at certain points. Not to the point where I was getting angry and wanted to walk out, but I was wearing 3D glasses since it was a 3D movie, and there were like 2 or 3 times during the movie where I threw off my glasses and threw them down, and I'm just like, "What WTF, man? What the fuck? What's happening here? Why is this happening? Like, what?" One of the biggest WTF moments was. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a specific thing that it's not really plot breaking, but there's a part in the movie where the gang goes off and they leave R2 behind, and there's just no explanation for it. Why was R2 left behind? Why? Why aren't the characters staying together? C3PO and R2D2 are their counterparts, right? Why? Why was R2 left behind? There was no reason given. Why? I don't know. I don't get it. WTF, right? So I remember that was one of the moments where I threw my glasses down. There were a couple others that were kind of cringy along those lines. By the time the credits rolled, I was ready to kind of get out of there as well because of some of those cringy things. But I definitely thought that um, the lack of cohesion of the characters when they would split up or when they would go off on their own, a lot of it didn't really make any sense. Um, but through this, one of the things that I realized with the Star Wars property in general is that Star Wars is this amazing canvas. It has this feel and aesthetic that's very unique that I don't think any other movie property has really replicated. So you always get this feel of something more, something epic. And I think it's a combination of a lot of the different things that George Lucas actually set up in the original and the prequel trilogies. Something about how the lasers sound, how the ships are designed. Um and what that does is it makes for the ability to have certain scenes that are really cool. And again, in Rise of Skywalker, there's some really cool scenes. There's a couple of very, very cool scenes with Rey. There's a couple of very, very cool scenes with Finn. I absolutely adored some of those scenes and really enjoyed it. But I feel like these scenes in these movies are kind of like a really well painted bird in an ugly painting, where somebody might say, "Oh, that's a really cool looking bird, but the painting's kind of ugly, so I kind of just don't like the whole thing." And I always bring up the quintessential example of this is the Duel of the Fates scene in The Phantom Menace, which is one of the best scenes in all of movie history, certainly one of the best fight scenes in all of movie history, that's in an absolutely horrendous movie. It's a terrible, awful movie with one of the best scenes ever. You can't say that that scene was bad. That scene is amazing, but a 2.5 minute scene doesn't make up for 2 hours of garbage, unfortunately. And I don't think the Rise of Skywalker was quite as cringy and garbage as some of the prequels were, but because the characters have been canon broken so bad, I think a lot of the visceral reaction a lot of fans are having are against that sort of thing. I don't think the Rise of Skywalker was that bad. I thought it was pretty decent in parts. Um, the story overall was rushed. You could tell it was rushed. They were rushing from point to point. There were plot points that were being dropped. There were so many Chekhov's guns that weren't firing that it's very it's very unsatisfying in certain ways. Despite those things being rushed and dropped, the overall plot of the movie was coherent. There was an actual flow to the movie, a beginning, a middle, and end, a climax, a denouement. It made at least made some level of sense. Um, you know, but the issue that a lot of people are going to have is a lot of those things that were brought up and then dropped were interpersonal things. So beyond just the canon breaking stuff, this is the other thing that I think a lot of people have real issue with, and that I'm going to take issue with, is that there were a lot of things that were between certain characters that were half developed, partially developed, hinted at, or even strongly suggested. And then there's a couple of things that happen where you're just like, what? Wait, what? Why is this happening? Like, and again, that was one of those. There's a couple of those moments where I threw the glasses off, right? So, I definitely think that the rushness of the entire thing, you can definitely tell. And I think this is where you see a lot of other movie critics talking about where this movie kind of falls flat, is how things are so rushed and disjointed. I don't think things were quite as disjointed so much as they started something and then just never finished it in so many different ways. And I think in the end, this movie might be a study in why the mystery box that J.J. Abrams talks about is a really bad example of. It's a really prime example of why a mystery box is bad to make a movie, because it ends up being very unsatisfying. There's some things that are nice to leave to the audience, to the beholder to determine for themselves. But when you have so many loose ends, it just ends up feeling like, well, what the heck, man? Like what actually happened here? It's like you're telling half a story. Um, but there at least was an ending. And a lot of people are probably not going to be satisfied with the ending. I thought the ending was not as bad as at least some people seem to make it out to be. I thought the ending was at least satisfying in a certain way, and at least it was an ending. Um, it wasn't something that was really horrendous, at least in my opinion. And especially when you compare to J.J. Abrams' other endings of some of his other properties, Rise of Skywalker might be the best, at least that I can think of. Uh, you know, the ending of Lost was so bad that it basically ruined any sort of rewatchability for the entire series forever. Why would anybody want to watch the first 6 seasons of Lost when they know the ending is going to be so horrendously bad? And it just makes it very unsatisfying when you know an ending is that terrible. I don't think the ending of Rise of Skywalker was all that bad. I think it certainly was cringy to a certain extent. But I felt that at least it did have some level of satisfaction in terms of the conclusion. I might be biased because I really like Daisy Ridley, and I actually really like Rey as a character. I think that the character was not done right in terms of giving them an arc. I think not having a proper hero's journey for Rey was a really big mistake. But there's just something about Rey that I really enjoy. I don't know if I necessarily, maybe like I identify her. Maybe I just think Daisy Ridley's really, really good looking. Maybe I find an affinity towards Rey. I think Rey is the kind of hero that I would like to think of myself as somebody who's, lawful good, who always tries to do the right thing and struggles, mightily against some really dark forces, both internally and externally. And, you know, that's just kind of how I feel. And I really just don't think the ending was bad. Although maybe my expectations were so low that might have affected it. But in any case, I didn't think the ending of the movie was really all that bad compared to other J.J. Abrams endings, and I don't think it was as bad as other people make it out to be. Certainly, this movie was flawed. I don't think it was a great movie. I thought the visual effects and obviously the AAA nature of a Disney movie, it was really good in those aspects. I felt the lightsaber battles were really lacking, at least in terms of the overall action and stakes. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on Rise of Skywalker Episode 9. If you have any comments, I'd like to hear them in the comments down below. And then later I will be uploading a more fully spoilerish review of a lot of the specific plot points. So hope you enjoyed this, and take care. Catch you later.